It is time to get out of pocket. I'm your host, Michael Davis, on the Boom Broadcasting YouTube channel. It's Tuesday. We have not one, but two breaking news alerts on this Tuesday. I'm going to be welcoming in Joseph Kamperman, in addition to Chris DeLuca from Dugout Debrief, and they're going to talk to me about the big news that two AFC East teams made on this Tuesday afternoon. But of course, I couldn't get them on a few minutes earlier. I know you guys have been waiting all week and all weekend for these top quarter rankings. If you are just joining us, this is a staple to our Tuesday programming. And I rank the top 8 NFL teams from 8 to 1. And guys, I decided to wear my Cowboys hoodie because a part of me wants to put the Dallas Cowboys in these top quarter rankings after their Sunday night, Monday midnight win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. But do I? I don't know. We'll see how I'm feeling. But coming in at number 8, we have an NFC team who emerged victorious in prime time. I got the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Atlanta Falcons really impressed me on Thursday night. They were playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, perhaps the most entertaining Thursday night football game, not just of the season, but in recent memory. The Atlanta Falcons just rallied behind Kirk Cousins, who was 42 of 58, 509 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but it was a back and forth between Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield, two guys who their old teams had given up on them. The Carolina Panthers gave up on Tampa Bay quarterback Baker Mayfield. Kirk Cousins was given up by the Minnesota Vikings, and they've both landed with NFC South teams in hopes to resurrect their careers and go for a division crown. I had Tampa in my rankings, obviously, last week, but with Atlanta and what they're doing, they beat the Philadelphia Eagles, Joseph's favorite team. Joseph will be on here in a few minutes. They also, back-to-back weeks, beat not only the Buccaneers in overtime on a short week, but they beat, at the time, the red-hot New Orleans Saints. And so you already give, okay, let's look at their losses real quick. The first week, they lost to the Steelers. Really good defensive team, the Pittsburgh Steelers are. Okay? They've lost to the Chiefs. Everyone's losing to the Chiefs. Okay? But you not only beat the Philadelphia Eagles, who's seen as an NFC powerhouse, but you beat your top 2 competitors in the division. Then you have the Carolina Panthers this weekend. Dude, Atlanta could go 3-0 in their division to start out. And in their case, you just need to win your division to make the playoffs. And so I think Atlanta is well on their way to doing that. Coming in at number 7, I have the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, they were on a bye. So yeah, I did have to drop them a couple spots here in my top core rankings. But when you look at Detroit, they're still a viable team. They're still one of the contenders in the NFC. But I mean, they lost to the Bucs. The Falcons beat the Bucs. You know, there may be some division familiarity there. But the Lions, they beat the Rams week 1. They beat the Cardinals week 3. They beat the Seahawks week 4. We saw the Seahawks lose at home this past week to the Giants. But the Lions have a really competitive game this upcoming weekend against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. The Cowboys actually haven't won a game at home yet. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the Lions do against the Cowboys. And then the following week, they have the Minnesota Vikings, who are currently undefeated. So 2 road games could actually propel the Lions up in these top quarter rankings and could land them a spot there. Come in at number 5, I have the NFC East Washington Commanders. The Commanders are on a roll right now. They have introduced a rookie quarterback in the best way possible. Caleb Williams in Chicago, it took a couple weeks to get that going. It was honestly from the start with Dan Quinn and the Washington Commanders. Jayden Daniels is electrifying. He's the offensive rookie of the year front runner. Was 14 of 25, 238 yards, a touchdown, and interception, along with 11 carries for 82 yards against the Cleveland Browns defense. The Browns struggling a little bit this year. I thought there would be just a little bit more fight, at least on the defensive side. Of course, the team is without Nick Chubb, so I didn't expect too much from the offensive side of the ball, but I was expecting them to put up a solid effort against a offense that is just, plug and play. The only real people from this team last year was Scary Terry and Brian Robinson Jr. But the Commanders just absolutely blew the brakes off the Browns this past weekend. Again, 34-13. Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, Brian Robinson, they're all being used effectively, and it's a balanced attack between that and also the pass game. Scary Terry probably has the first quarterback of his life, throwing him the football, and that always helps a wide receiver. Scary Terry, very, very underrated wide receiver, and you look at what the Commanders have done ever since losing that first week. They beat the Giants. They beat the Bengals. They blew the brakes off the Cardinals. They blew the brakes off the Browns. They do have a challenge this upcoming weekend in Baltimore at the Ravens. I can go ahead and tell you the Baltimore ranks a little ahead of the Commanders in this week's top quarter rankings, but that could change depending on how Washington responds to a top-level team like the Baltimore Ravens. And there's a lot of area rivalry right there between the Commanders and Ravens, so looking forward to seeing who comes ahead on that. But where's Baltimore rank from 5 to 1? You'll have to see right now, because coming in at number 5, we have the Green Bay Packers. Now, Carson hosts a really good Green Bay Packers podcast called Lombardi Party, drops every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Obviously, missed last week due to everything that was happening in the Northwest North Carolina region. I've talked about that several times on our programming. If you guys are feeling led to help, it's about to get cold in this area. In this area of North Carolina, it's about to get freezing. So if you feel led to donate blankets, donate something that can help keep people warm because their homes are destroyed. They don't have power. It's a bad time for the people in this region. So wishing everyone well. We'll keep you updated, see if Lombardi Party is able to release an episode tomorrow. There's still, power outages. There's still a lot more to be taken care of versus, doing a podcast. But I have been in communication with Carson. He is doing okay. So that is the most important thing. And I'm sure he appreciates the Packers coming in at number 5 this week. The Packers had a test against the Rams on the road. And everybody's like, the Rams aren't playing too hot. But yeah, you play Matt Stafford, who's very familiar, playing against Green Bay. You have Kyron Williams, who's making plays on the ground. The Rams were without Cooper Kupp. They were without Puka Nacua. Jordan Winton's actually starting to step up. 7 catches, 89 yards. But it's basically a, good luck naming some of the wide receivers playing for the Rams. They've obviously lost an identity with Aaron Darnold. But I thought, I picked Green Bay to win this game, but I thought for a second that the Rams being 1-3, that Sean McVay would get his team riled up to play. And the Rams were actually leading this game 13-10 at halftime. And then we saw Green Bay take over. Jordan Love, 15 of 26, 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pick. Josh Jacobs on the ground, 19 carries, 73 yards, a touchdown. Emmanuel Wilson helping take some of those carries. But again, with the Rams, they're doing it with who are they on offense, right? The Packers, it just feels like it's a different guy stepping up each week. It's either Dontavian Wicks or Jaden Reed or Christian Watson. Watson, nothing in this game. Tucker Kraft, 4 catches, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns from the tie-in position. There's somebody stepping up. This defense is giving people fits right now. Holding the Rams to 19 points. They lost to the Vikings, but before that, they had held the Titans to 14. They held the Colts to 10. And they lost barely that week one opener. I've been very impressed as long as the Eagles and Vikings games are the ones they only drop. The Packers have the Cardinals coming up this week. They have the Texans as their next challenge on October 20th here in a couple weeks. So I expect to see Green Bay in these top quarter rankings after next week, after they handle the Arizona Cardinals. And we'll see them against the Houston Texans in their next challenge. You also can be about our, show by commenting on the YouTube channel, just like Jason did, one of the co-hosts of Sideline Savants, a fantasy football show that premieres Wednesdays at noon. Jason says a stretch at 5. I don't know. I really like Green Bay here, and they even move up because of Detroit having that bye, and Washington impressing me, Green Bay impressing me. Tutu Atwell, another Rams wide receiver, fantasy pick? I don't know, Jason. What do you say? You're the fantasy football expert. You and Wayne. I want to know if I should pick up Tutu in my fantasy football league. Now, I mentioned the Packers. They'll probably handle the Cardinals, but it will depend if they handle this team in a couple weeks. I got the Houston Texans in at number 4. Guys, the Houston Texans are good. I was wrong about C.J. Stroud coming in the league, 28 of 38, 331 yards, a touchdown, an interception in a 23-20 home victory against the Buffalo Bills. But more importantly, they made Josh Allen look like, I don't know, Bryce Young, just a foot taller, because this was gross, the way that they handled Josh Allen in the passing game, and they were able to play good defense. It doesn't matter if it's Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Cam Akers in the backfield while Joe Mixon has been out. The Texans are just having dudes step up. I think this is a team of dogs. I really believe that C.J. Stroud actually landed in a better position than we thought he did originally. Just said it, by the way, Jason. He gets points. Well, I was trying to hype your show up tomorrow. But yeah, very impressive. C.J. Stroud showing that he's probably an MVP front runner in comparison to Josh Allen. I got the Texans at 4. We got the Baltimore Ravens at 3. I just think really highly of not only the Ravens, but the 2 teams ahead of them in these top quarter rankings. I'll reveal here in just a second. Division games are tough. So I'm not going to penalize the Baltimore Ravens for, winning in overtime, giving up 38 points to the Cincinnati Bengals, because the Bengals had their back against the wall. We saw one of the best games from Joe Burrow this past week. 30 of 39, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns, just 1 pick. We saw one of the best games from Jamar Chase, 10 catches, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. T. Higgins showed up, 9 catches, 83 yards, 2 touchdowns. But it wasn't enough because the Baltimore Ravens did something that the Dallas Cowboys weren't willing to do, and that's go after Derrick Henry. 15 carries, 92 yards, a touchdown for Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson, 12 carries, 55 yards on the ground, 26 of 42, 348 yards, 4 touchdowns in the air. And Derrick Henry, my only gripe was you didn't run into the end zone. That would have helped my fantasy team this week. I wish you had just knew that guy was chasing you and went to that end zone, because that would have been absolutely fantastic for my fantasy team. But Baltimore, they're nasty. And they were 1-2. They rally off 2 straight wins. Baltimore they were 0-2, by the way, and they've beaten the Cowboys, the Bills, and then the Bengals in overtime. They got a test against the Washington Commanders, who are really hot next week, so I want to keep an eye on that. But Ravens at 3. Before we get Joseph in and Chris in to talk some of the breaking NFL news, want to share the top 2 teams. The number 2 is Minnesota Vikings. No movement here. Beat the New York Jets, who just fired their head coach. That was breaking news before we went on air today. But the Minnesota Vikings putting Robert Saleh out of a job, putting the Jets down. 2-3. Intercepting Aaron Rodgers, making history. The first time Rodgers has thrown 2 interceptions in the first quarter in his career. And Aaron Rodgers, he's old. He's also beaten up on the Minnesota Vikings a time or two, so it felt good, I'm sure, for that fan base to stick it to Aaron Rodgers and really bring doubt to the Jets season. But Minnesota coming back, I don't think anyone expected. As a matter of fact, I predicted that the Vikings would probably land one of the top 2 or 3 picks this year in the draft after J.J. McCarthy went down with a torn meniscus. But Sam Darnold showing that, hey, even Sam Darnold didn't even have the best game. 14 of 31, 179 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. He didn't have the greatest game. Justin Jefferson was hurt in this game a little bit. Jordan Addison stepping up. But this defense, nasty. 3 sacks, 3 interceptions. It was a good game for the Minnesota Vikings. And obviously, no surprise here. We got the Chiefs at number 1. Now, I do understand that I went as a bold prediction yesterday. I mean, there was a 3-way tie after the NFL predictions on Friday's Out of Pocket. Aaron, Rick 8-Bit, and myself were tied. They picked the Chiefs, and I was a gentleman. I was like, you know what? Let me be different. Let me pick the Saints. But Aaron got it on the nose, Chiefs by 13, so he won the tiebreaker. He won the NFL pick, so he will defend his crown this week. But, I mean, in all honesty, did anyone doubt the Chiefs? I mean, I know I picked against them to be a little different, but come on. The Chiefs won pretty handedly at home. Patrick Mahomes, great. Kareem Hunt showing that he still has juice that the Cleveland Browns are probably missing. Didn't expect Kareem Hunt to ever return to the Kansas City, but he has. And Juju Smith-Schuster, 7 catches, 130 yards, showing that, hey, maybe it's not so bad that Rashee Rice is gone for the season. He's out for the year. But you know what I'm excited about? To get out of these top quarter rankings and to get some guests in to the show. Finally, they've been waiting backstage, and we finally got them. I'm going to introduce first the host of Dugout Debrief. He's a Steelers fan. I'm not going to rub in that the Cowboys beat his team this past week, but he'll be talking a lot of the baseball playoffs going on in his show Thursday at noon, Dugout Debrief. We got Chris here in the show. Chris, it's good having you. That was my last dig at your Steelers.
I appreciate that one. Yeah, it was a rough ending to the game, but like we were talking about individually, it was a well-coached game between both teams. So
yeah, and maybe that was a dig by Jason saying Juju, your former receiver, stepped up. And now I got to bring in a guy who actually had a bye week this past week for his team, but he's a good friend of mine, even though he's an Eagles guy. I don't like the Eagles, but I kind of tolerate Mr. Joseph Kamperman. Joseph, you're doing good, my friend, in fantasy football, but I hope your Eagles have less success than that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, it's unfortunate because I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I wear my Eagles jersey? Because Michael's wearing his Cowboys, and then I can't stand the LA Dodgers. And I don't know Chris. I'm sure Chris is a nice guy, but oh my God, I'm being hit with both of it today. And I'm a Phillies fan, so I have no room to gripe because our team is absolute dog water, has been the last decade, but maybe we'll win something eventually.
Yeah, you're down by 1 right now. So
hey, speaking of dog water, the New York Jets, that's a sentence right there. The Jets fired their head coach, Robert Saleh. Guys, this was, I mean, just out of the blue. If you had asked me who was going to be the first coach fired, I would have went with Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland. There's several other guys I thought would happen, but not the Jets, who entered this week 2-2. You go to Landon, you lose to an undefeated team in the Minnesota Vikings, and you decide, hey, we're done with our coach, who seems to finally have a defense, who seems to finally have weapons on the offense, who seems to have a quarterback who's semi-healthy but a little bit older in the veteran Aaron Rodgers. It just doesn't feel like the Jets should have made this move, at least not right now. But he was 20-36 in his career with the Jets, coming in as the 49ers defensive coordinator. He's 2-3 this year, and now he's without a job. And I can't help but think there's a little bit of collusion and maybe this was a decision that Aaron Rodgers may have made. Chris, what was your initial reaction to this firing?
Well, I think it was kind of mixed feelings because, like you said, they were finally kind of getting it together, it seemed, within reason. But I think that the team is in win now mode. They need to have an offensive minded head coach. They didn't go with that, an offensive minded head coach not named Nathaniel Hackett. But I think the Jets kind of looked at this and they said, look, if we are going to win this division for the first time, or make the playoffs rather for the first time since 2010, it will be this year because the Bills, while they're still very good, did not have the hottest start, and the Dolphins are completely discombobulated without Tua Tagovailoa, and the Patriots are the Patriots. So if the Jets are going to do it, it's this year. I think Robert Saleh will instantly get hired as a DC, but overall, he was one of those guys that, in theory, when you look at him, he looks like he's a good NFL head coach. Like when he got hired in 2021, I looked at him and said, this is going to be a good NFL head coach. I'm sure both you guys agreed with it. He has just that vibe, and it just didn't work out. There are some guys that you look and you'll think they'll be great. I was one who was huge on the hiring, and I was wrong there.
Hey, and especially with the 49ers organization, like there's been some good coordinators, especially guys who I think could step up. We were just talking about Steve Wilkes yesterday with Aaron Schneider, a good friend of Chris. I was able to meet Chris through Aaron, so very grateful for that. And, getting you a baseball podcast here on Boom Broadcasting. You're doing really good with that. And I was talking to Aaron about Steve Wilkes, former 49ers defensive coordinator, would make a good head coach of the Mountaineers. And a lot of people thought Saleh would make a good head coach for the Jets. But Joseph, his time as the Jets head coach is over.
Yeah, this one caught me by surprise. I think it caught a lot of the world by surprise. I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate and say, I do agree with you. I really thought Stefanski would be the first one just because it's an absolute dumpster fire. There's two things at play here that I think have got to be addressed. And when you fire a head coach, it sets ripples through who you're going to hire next. We think of the end of this year, and I agree with Chris. I do kind of think this is going to be the year. It's unfortunate that they think that with a losing record. It would be, but of course, no one's going to fire their coach at 5-0, even though there's been holes since the beginning. My biggest problem with the Jets is, first of all, I'm hearing a report that they escorted him out with police escort out of the, we don't know whether that's true. We don't know whether he was able to address the team. These are rumors. They've not been confirmed. My biggest thing is you're setting yourself up for two things. Aaron Rodgers may or may not be back next year. I believe he's got 1 year left on a contract that is negotiable. My biggest issue with this is, who do you bring in? This is an organization that has been downright dysfunctional the last decade and a half. They've been dysfunctional, honestly, for a much longer than that. But we're talking, they really haven't experienced a good high and since Mark Sanchez. I mean, and we say who, what? And so my biggest thing is this: is Aaron Rodgers the diva we all think he is? I think he has to be. I mean, this is a question here. He forced Mike McCarthy out of Green Bay. I would argue that time was up for Mike McCarthy, but like, I think Aaron Rodgers is a high valued quarterback and is still a top 15 quarterback all time. But when you start asking the question, this guy has not won anything since their Super Bowl win. I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, he's got the stats, he's got the MVPs, but this is a dysfunctional organization that just made a dysfunctional fire. If anything, part ways with him at the end of the year. Bringing in your interim head coach, who is a defensive coordinator, is not going to get you to the playoffs any better than Robert Saleh. I'm sorry. It's the stupidest mistake they could ever have made. I'm all for him getting fired at the end of the year if things don't work out. But firing him on week 5 when this division is in play, you even said it. I just unbelievable. I was like, what the crap? I'm sitting here like, I don't like the Jets. I think their organization is terrible, but that was a downright trash move today. And their players they said there's going to be collusion in the locker room. There's no way. Some people who are for that are still going to be for the way they mishandled this situation.
Which is absolutely crazy. And I agree with Aaron Rodgers being a diva. It feels like he's almost like the LeBron James of the NFL, to where he has full control over who his head coach is, who is on his roster, particularly on his offense, who his offensive coordinator was with Nathaniel Hackett. Chris, I'm surprised that they didn't name Hackett as the interim head coach based on how much Rodgers likes him.
Except he's won multiple rings. We're not talking about Rodgers winning 5 rings or like a Tom Brady coming in saying, pick this coach. This is a guy who hasn't won a championship game since the Super Bowl run.
Chris?
And I like Rodgers. I actually kind of like that whole idea, but
Chris, Jason bringing up a good point. Most overrated quarterback in NFL history. I'm putting you
that
on the
comment
spot.
I disagree with. I disagree with
I
that. But I mean, overall, I think Rodgers might have had something to do with it. I've read conflicting reports with it. But overall, he played horribly. I mean, he threw 3 interceptions, like you said earlier, the back-to-back, or that was the first, you said first 2 in the first quarter or something. Yeah. So, and then he also threw the game-losing one. So overall, I don't think that, I thought the contract signing was ridiculous anyway. Like I said, Robert Saleh will be a great DC somewhere else. I think he'll get hired somewhere. And yeah, I mean, Hackett, I do not think that would have been the smart move. I think they would have almost been better off just bringing in whoever their quarterbacks coach is. I can't even name who that is, something like that, or their line coach or receivers coach, whatever, you know?
Yeah, it would have been tough. Jason bringing up 11-10 playoff record, 1-4 in NFC title games. By the way, thank you. Not other quarterbacks get the playoff record brought up other than Dak Prescott, so I really appreciate that as a Cowboys fan. Near's Jalen Hurts. Dude, also, by the way, how great is it that the Eagles pay Jalen Hurts like $255 million to be a motivational Instagram speaker and give the ball to the other team? I mean, he's the most expensive UPS driver that the AFL has.
I mean, we have the players we have because the contract is still vastly under the other quarterbacks. I'm not going to get into that. He's not been playing well. I'm not going to sit here and say he has, but I'm pretty happy with the contract he's signed.
And Eric's saying they fired the wrong coach. And, you know, I honestly think I don't think they're going to bring in some brand new voice this year, which, you know, also, you know, rubs me a little the wrong way. But when I look at the rest of the NFL, who do you think, if there is another coach that gets fired mid-season, Chris, who do you think that could be?
So I have 3, I'll say, and I'm going to kind of I'll say 3, and I'll skip some of the obvious. So I'll say number 1 would be Stefanski, simply because of the lack of cohesion, rather. The major issue with that, obviously, is the quarterback situation, and that's a whole other conversation for all other day. Obviously, the quarterback drives the offense, but still, who's calling the plays? 2, this one might be a little bit of a not popular one. I will say Doug Peterson. The Jags' atrocious start. It would not surprise me if he's to be fired simply because of all the pieces that they have. Trevor Lawrence and Kirk, ETN, Tank Bigsby, and they're still not getting it done in a relatively winnable division. And then my final will just be Antonio Pierce, simply because they're Raiders' success. I mean, while I think his personality fits the whole Raider way, I mean, you know, you kind of have to be an a-hole to be the Raiders head coach. It's kind of like a whole MO of them. So, yeah, I would say those are my 3. And then obviously Carolina's coach is the number 1, but I just skipped over that one because I'll leave that for y'all.
Carolina's.
I like Canales, but I mean, what is he working with? And it would be way too soon. Like
way too soon.
It'd be way too soon.
Yeah.
David Tepper has got to stable some things out. Calm down, take a breath, buddy.
Now, Joseph, you know, Chris mentioned Antonio Pierce, Stefanski, Doug Pearson. You're familiar with Doug from his time in Philly. Actually helped deliver y'all a Super Bowl. Do you agree with that list, or would you add to it?
I'm definitely going to add to it. I agree with Stefanski. This is a dumpster fire brewing. If he had any reason, you know, let's put it this way, Stefanski was a great hire if the whole Deshaun Watson thing would not have gone down. I think that if you had taken Deshaun from his prime, and of course the Texans probably would never have traded him in this instance, but if you had done all these things and you're in a different world, I don't think Stefanski's the worst coach, but I'll say this: many coordinators make good coordinators, don't make good coaches. Stefanski is in that bunch. When it comes to Doug Peterson is going to be a great senior advisor for a team. He is not old enough yet to be one because this guy's like, I think, mid-50s. So he's still relatively young to be a senior advisor. I actually think he's going to get another head coaching gig. I think that he's dealt with an organization that, I don't know, Jacksonville didn't really seem like it was a fit when he went there. He's going to get an opportunity. He is a great head coach. He's a terrible play caller. His biggest weakness is who he surrounds himself with. You don't have to be you have to have good play callers in place if you're not going to be a play caller. That's one of Doug Peterson's. He is a great person on camaraderie in the locker room. If you need someone to settle a situation, he'd be the type of guy to bring in with a guy who's like a diva like Rodgers. If you want to let the offense run itself, bring in a guy who's just going to be that guy, who's just going to be the overarching figure. Now, if you're an Eagles fan, you hate that because Sirianni, who is one of the guys on the hot seat that I have, is the guy who is essentially that guy now, except we're not seeing any good results. And then he's contradicting things saying, well, I can technically veto any play Kellen Moore calls, which is true, is the role of a head coach. But how many times are you vetoing? We just don't know about it. You're only obviously saying that on the obvious fourth down plays when you say that was my call. And you have to go and you have to make a piss poor excuse saying that was my call. Don't blame that on Kellen. I'm fed up with his attitude. Let's put it this way. If the Eagles drop another 3 games, Jeffrey Lurie and the Eagles organization is one of the most stable organizations in the NFL. They're not going to make an in-season firing unless it gets so bad where we're looking at 6-7 game losing streak. They will hold him, as painful as it is for Eagles fans, because they are a stable organization unlike the Jets. My obvious one that I will say that I think this is a bold one, and I'm hesitant to say this when I'm saying it because it's out of pocket, is Kyle Shanahan.
What? No, absolutely not.
I'm telling you right now.
Oh my
God.
God.
The 49ers brass is getting tired of his thing. It's the same thing with Sirianni. They're a stable organization that are not going to make an in-season firing. But if you see the 49ers lose 4 to 6 games, you can't help but say that this is a flyer. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying I think they part ways. I definitely think they part ways at the end of the season if they don't make a run. I mean, I don't know. This is a team that is one of the most talented rosters. They should be 5-0 right now. We should not be talking about the Vikings, who in the spring, when I had a conversation with you on this show, we talked about who was the most under pressure, and I said it was Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings coach, and they went out and they've proved people wrong. I mean, they're the biggest surprise. So, okay, 2 flyers that are probably unlikely to happen during the season is Sirianni and
Shanahan.
Shanahan, thank you. I think my third is probably the obvious one, and it was just going to be adding on to Antonio Pierce because I don't think Canales there's any chance. I don't really think there's any other team that is going to, unless Mike McCarthy, but again, it's the Cowboys. They're not, I just don't think any of these are going to be mid-season firings. I think those McCarthy, Shanahan, and Sirianni could all very well be on the hot seat at the end of the year if they don't make.
So McCarthy still doesn't have a contract through next year. So his contract expires at the end of this year. So,
but off season, because they could still,
that could be a transition. Yeah. That could be a transition, of course.
And I think that's what Jerry Jones is going to allow it to do. He really likes to give his coaches way too much time, in my opinion.
Jason Garrett.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I'm sorry. That guy should have been fired 2 years prior. I was happy as an Eagles fan. He wasn't, but
I mean, fair. The guy who defined 8-8. By the way, I will say this: if the Cowboys don't bring Mike McCarthy back and the 49ers do cut Shanahan, if Jerry does not throw that, Kyle should be able to write his own number and Jerry give it to him.
Absolutely.
That has, if Kyle Shanahan or Mike Tomlin got fired today, it would be the breaking news would happen at 6:05 today. And we would be announcing their new team at 6:15.
That's the same for the Eagles. Kyle Shanahan, especially on either the Cowboys or the Eagles team, because of his offensive guru, makes them Super Bowl contenders top 3.
Easy hire. Easy hire.
But I mean, that's if the 49ers brass parts ways. They are just like the Eagles, very solid. They're going to give their people. And I'm not a big Belichick fan, even though it's likely he becomes our head coach if Sirianni gets fired, just because of his ties to that area.
See,
No.
Jason said Belichick floating around. I don't see it. Not at this time. I think there's more of a chance that Tom Brady leaves the commentary booth. Jason also out of pocket for Mike McDaniel.
Ooh.
I would take Mike McDaniel. I would take Kyle Shanahan. Their offensive minds are just so impressive. You can't help that Mike McDaniel's starting quarterback got hurt.
And
because
stats don't lie. Football. Stats don't lie. Offensive coordinators becoming coaches, offensive minds becoming coaches, historical Super Bowl record. That's why I've never been a big McDermott fan. Great guy in Buffalo, but the statistics are against you as a defensive coordinator if you want to try to make it to the Super Bowl and win.
Now, one name we haven't mentioned, and then I want to move on to our other breaking news, is the Bengals head coach, Zach Taylor. Which people would be like, hey, they've actually done well. Well, as a matter of fact, they only placed first in the AFC North back-to-back years. That was the one time they were in the Super Bowl. The following year, they were in the AFC title game. But every other year, they've placed fourth in the AFC North. They've placed below Cleveland 3 of his 5 years in Cincinnati. They're at 1-4 right now, not looking anywhere up. You have Joe Burrow, you have Jamar Chase, you have T. Higgins. The T. Higgins situation being mishandled right now. You had Joe Mixon in the building before he walked to Houston. I would be shocked if it isn't Zach Taylor or Kevin Stefanski being fired here in the next 3 weeks. Before Halloween.
I could see it. I mean, Zach Taylor, it's a lot of the Bengals' success is honestly despite his best efforts, and we've already discussed Stefanski, but like I never really thought Zach Taylor was a great coach when it came to play calling or locker room personality either. He just kind of seems like he's just kind of there. Like I'm not calling him a wet blanket, but it just kind of feels like he's just kind of there. Like,
38, 48, and 1 as a head coach.
But here's the thing. You have to ask yourself, at what cost firing someone mid-season? Tell me, besides Bisaccia with the Raiders, right? Tell me what interim head coach has really given a team a Super Bowl / deep in the playoffs chance. I don't see the point in firing any of these coaches outside of Stefanski because the Bengals still, I know statistics are against them, but this is still a very talented team. I don't know. I'd be hesitant to part ways with any coach midway. Shoot for the number 1 overall pick and give Joe Burrow the left tackle of his dreams, or the flipping O-line. Like, why put yourself in a position to finish with a mid-range pick? I don't know. I know no fan wants to tank, but like that's a real thing when you're sitting at 1-4.
Especially in that division too. I mean, that incredibly hard division.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not for firing him just because it's like you could set your team up for success. This is not a bad team. This is a good team with a bad coach.
Well, speaking of a bad team, they weren't the only team with breaking news. The Jets weren't. AFC East rival, the New England Patriots, have announced that Drake May slated to start this week. The number 2 overall pick this year. The Patriots started the year with a win, a surprising win over the Bengals we just talked about, but then they've lost 4 straight. They've dropped it to Seattle, New York Jets, the 49ers, the Miami Dolphins, and the most points they've put up this year is 20 against Seattle in that losing effort. And just feels like this offense is stagnant, surprisingly behind Jacoby Brissett. So they're like, hey, let's throw Drake May out there and see if they can get any experience right here. Now, we've seen how some quarterbacks are thrown in there too early, and it's damaged them. Bryce Young last year started for the first couple games this year, and they're like, hey, he's not ready. So they've benched him and honestly probably set Bryce Young back more than actually propel and help him. And now the Patriots at 1-4 are throwing Drake May in there against the Texans. They couldn't even wait 1 more week to let him have his first game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But no, they're going to put him out there against one of the teams that were high on my top core rankings at the beginning of the show, the Houston Texans. Guys, we're going to get 2 number 2 overall picks facing each other this week. But Chris, I would not have made this move if I was New England.
Yeah, I definitely would have waited a little bit. I agree with the whole rushing quarterbacks is a really, really bad idea. And the Bryce Young example is a wonderful example of that. And against Houston, who's had a really solid defense this year, I think that they should have waited at least until next week or wait a little bit. He took a little bit of time to learn under Brissett. I will give him that. It was only been 5 weeks or so. And I think I read somewhere that they were basically practicing as if they were like co-starters, at least in the offseason. I don't know if they maintain that, or through OTAs. I don't know if they maintain that once the season started, but they're essentially treating it as either one of them could start at any point. So I will say that practice-wise, he's probably prepared, but I think development-wise, he's not. And also, like, I also wasn't really big on them drafting him anyway. I didn't think Drake May was the best overall rookie quarterback available in the draft. And I'm not saying he's going to suck, but he would not have been who I would have drafted there at number 2 anyway. We might see a curse of a number 2 pick.
And I misspoke, by the way. That's on me. Drake May was third behind Caleb Williams and Jay Daniels, CJ Stroud, number 2 last year. But two very high prospects when it comes to the draft the last couple of years. So, Joseph, what do you think of this move?
Terrible and trash. I feel like the Patriots of all organizations, an organization that I can't stand, but an organization that, was from the most part pretty stable and, quite successful over the last 20 years. First of all, I don't really think they could have I wouldn't have picked a quarterback. I was never high on anyone outside of Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. In fact, I wasn't even very high on Caleb Williams. And so far, I'm correct. I do think part of this is because of coaching. But I think Drake May was a fine pick at 3. I don't think it was a great pick, but he's better than any of the other quarterbacks. Maybe we'll be wrong, and maybe Penix will one day be good. But with that being said, terrible move. The bottom line is this. I love this comment, the Jaden Daniels effect, because it was kind of going into it. Bryce Young is going to forever live under CJ Stroud's shadow because of Jaden Daniels' success. If these two quarterbacks, and I'm talking about Caleb Williams as well, but especially Drake May, come out and just lay, and especially Drake May now, comes out and just lays egg after egg after egg the next couple of games, this is the Jaden Daniels effect. Is once again Jaden Daniels and Bryce Young. It's going to be Drake May and Jaden Daniels. CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, it's going to be the exact same thing. I think it's a terrible move. The Eagles, when they made the decision to move on for Carson Wentz at the time, which I hated because I supported Carson Wentz just because he was part of that Super Bowl run, but they made that decision like in week 12 to move on. And I know it was kind of on the tail end of Doug Peterson's career, but it was definitely a very brass decision. It was not Doug's decision. You could tell Doug wanted to continue to probably start Carson Wentz. With that being said, I would have started in week 12. It's the same thing. When you hire Gerard Mayo, this is not a one-year hire. They weren't planning on firing him. Kraft alone has said that this was a commitment that he had made essentially up to 3 years ago. They had been deciding to make him the coach, when the eventual parting with Belichick was. My biggest thing is this. You guys have an opportunity to get some of the best playmakers in the draft next year. Why do you feel like you need to move to Drake May and set him up when he's going to have to live in the shadow of Jaden Daniels, especially for the rest of the year, and CJ Stroud? We're talking about two quarterbacks that have under 2 years of playing experience in the NFL, and both of them are playing well. Jaden Daniels has an amazing historical start to his rookie career. I think some of it's going to come down, just like how I think the whole Sam Darnold's thing is going to end up evening out. But it's just not a good look for a quarterback that's this young. And I feel like the Patriots should know better. Like, look at what happened with Tom Brady. Like, I don't know. These are the AFC East has made 2 bonehead decisions today. Look, the statistics are there. Starting young quarterbacks, unless you have a generational talent, is a bad idea early on in the year. Let them sit, let them glean. This is not a good Patriots team. They need number 1 overall picks. They don't need to finish 8-8 or 8-9 or 9-8. I mean,
and you know who a generational talent is? MJF, but also Nitram from Four Sides of the Ring, who's going to join us here in a couple minutes. But before I let Chris and Joseph go, one throw something at you as a curveball. I mean, talking about the AFC East, since honestly anyone's division to win, you got the Bills at 3-2. You got both the Jets and Dolphins at 2-3. The Patriots at 1-4. But The Jets just fired their head coach, hoping to turn things around, but can they? The Patriots at 1-4 almost feels like a lost cause unless Drake May just catches lightning in a ball, like Jason mentioned in our comments. The Dolphins, who knows Tua's health and, what's next for him. Is this like a runaway division now for Buffalo, Joseph?
Yes. Yeah. I don't even need to think about this. I think by week 13 to 14, they'll have it secured. I don't have faith in the whole Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers somehow taking chance of this offense. The Jets are talented. Their O-line is in shambles. I still think Josh Allen is one of the top 2-3 quarterbacks in the AFC, without a shadow of a doubt. I'd probably say closer to 4 now, just because of how well some of the other ones are playing. But either way, he's a top quarterback in that conference. We don't know how long Tua is going to be back. Tua's directly in all of those players become fantasy and NFL relevant when he's at quarterback, whether we like him as a quarterback or not. It's without a shadow of a doubt. I think this is the Bills' division to lose. And here's another out of pocket. I'll do it again. If they fail to win the division with the division's current standing, I think this is Sean McDermott's last year. I just think that the pressure's on. They've got to make a run in the playoffs. I'm telling you, I said this last year. I think I was on another show with you. Last year, I said, I highly doubt we'll see this many coaches fired. Every year, we see a slew of coaches fired because organizations are frustrated. And I really think McDermott, if they start dropping games in a very, very, very winnable division, you've got to think about parting ways with him and bring someone in like an offensive-minded coach, like a Ben Johnson from the Lions. Imagine Ben Johnson with Josh Allen. I just think you have to start thinking about it.
Dude, that's certainly out of pocket, but also impatient if the Bills were to do that. Chris, do you see the Bills running away with this division?
Yeah, pretty much everything Joseph said. It's their division to lose. An interesting little stat nug here is Sean McDermott is actually the fourth most senior head coach now, behind Tomlin, Reed, and slipping my mind right now. But he's been there since 2017. He's either the third or fourth. And what's fascinating about that is I do agree that they might consider it because that AFC championship, they cannot get that monkey off their back. That has been an issue. Yeah. And I think that they will win the division regardless of the boneheaded decisions, such as the one we saw at the end of their game in Houston with, basically letting them just march down the field instead of just running the clock. So, yeah, like Joseph really touched on all the points that I would have. I think Buffalo gets it, but I think that they might be like the last worst division winner in the AFC. I would say. And they have a lot of pieces still. Like, don't get me wrong.
They do have a lot of pieces. And to add on to Chris, I just looked it up. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Sean McDermott all started coaching their teams in 2017. Andy Reid in 2013, John Harbaugh in 2008, and Mike Tomlin in 2007.
Harbaugh was one I was forgetting. Yeah, I was trying to think. But yeah, Harbaugh was one I was forgetting.
But guys, I gotta let these guys go. Joseph Kamperman, appreciate having you on, my friend. Can't wait to see you back, and hopefully you start losing fantasy because I need the help.
Bottom line is I'm 3-1. I'm in a good position, and I won the league last year, so I'm just ready to cruise on to that second repeat. So.
I'm ready to hit the goodbye button. Bye, Joseph. Stop rubbing in that I lost. Guys, go check out Chris DeLuca on Dugout Debrief. Super excited to see what you cook up with the wild card playoffs. Appreciate you, and actually good luck to your Dodgers. I want to see.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Can't wait to see what you do on Thursday. But guys, I get to welcome in the guy who makes you say, "Oh damn!" It's the guy from Four Sides of the Ring. It's my guy Nick Ram. Nick Ram, dude, it's awesome to have you back on Out of Pocket on Boom Broadcasting, and I am prepping. I'm getting ready for me and the main event mics to go and claim the title that we were rightfully robbed of. Oh, whoa! What is that?
This is the title you're fighting for. Well, one of them. This is Red Strap. The other one's Blue Strap.
Well, dude, that works out great because that means, Mike has a red chair. I have a blue chair. I can take the blue strap. He can take the red strap. It was made for us. Like, it's in the cards.
You and 14 other teams are saying the same thing.
It will not be any of them. It'll be a tough matchup, of course. But I'm prepping, and I'm ready. I'm ready for action. Unlike our guy CM Punk, who is now taking time off. I talked about this on the nightcap last night with Mike. That's available on demand on Boom Broadcasting right now. My partner for 3 Count Trivia, that Four Sides of the Ring is putting together on their YouTube channel. If you haven't had a chance and you're a wrestling fan, or even if you're not, just be nice and go subscribe. Go show them support. Go show them love, because they always do the same thing here, and they're really nice guys. I even got to meet them in person. But CM Punk taking time off. I love the detail of him not walking all the way to the ring, but I don't love that WWE was like, hey, this guy has, his knock in AEW was he'd win a big match, he'd get hurt. He'd win the AEW title and get hurt. He'd jump into the crowd and get hurt. And when he shows up and finally wrestles on pay-per-view, he's in the Royal Rumble match. Well, guess what? He gets hurt. And Drew McIntyre has to carry the story. And then you get him all the way through Hell in a Cell. You get him 3 matches against Drew McIntyre. And, of course, you're going to sell the Hell in a Cell, like, injuries. But now he comes out and says, I'm hurt and I'm taking time off and I don't know when you'll see me again. I understand trying to sell the injuries, but I don't think they fully understood, like, hey, this is a guy we're trying to market and now he's hurt again. How did you take it as a fan when he came out and announced, hey, bye guys?
So all jokes aside, me and Brenny, we lived together, and I straight up said, I was like, what if he's injured? It was like the first thing I said. Like, what if he actually got injured? Like, it wouldn't surprise me. What if he tore his muscle for the 3rd time? So the fact that he came out and he started doing this promo, and CM Punk's delivery is always fantastic. It's one thing he's one of the greatest promos probably to cut a promo. And I believed everything he was saying until he got to that part where he was just like, I don't know what's next for CM Punk. I don't, it felt like people were like, oh, it felt like a retirement speech. To me, it felt like, I'll see you guys at the Rumble. And that's fine. I think they built up a lot of stuff for it happened to him to lose the Rumble also. Because they kind of like, you had the Seth Rollins coming out and gave him that nudge, like, you can't do what I do. You know what I mean? Kind of stuff. That's unfinished business. Also, you had the Ethan Page go to Adam Pearce and be like, your guy cost me my title. You know what I mean? So I thought that was all well done, because if you're going to bring Punk back in the Rumble, people are instantly going to think, well, Seth's going to get it. But you could also just set up that story with Ethan Page if you wanted to call him up to the main roster.
Wow.
It's unfinished business. So I like that aspect of it. We all know CM Punk is fragile. I think he does need time off. So I understand this. You know what I mean? I understand it. He's fragile. But the delivery of the promo was amazing. I felt that when he said, I haven't seen my wife in 5 weeks. For some reason, I know it's a lie, but I believed him because he's that good. So it's like, but then everything that happened after that, like I said, the Seth, the Ethan Page, all this, I was like, oh, okay, so Punk does have stories. He's just can't do it right now because he's fragile. They're scared he's going to tear that arm one more time.
He's fragile. He's fragile.
He's fragile. Put fragile stickers on him.
I didn't think about Ethan Page because he just dropped the NXT title to your favorite superstar, Trick Williams. If you guys know, you know. Nitram doesn't necessarily whoop that trick.
Nah, not at all.
Nah. But I didn't think about that. I would also, I mentioned this to Mike last night, like maybe bring him back for the Netflix Raw. And we show up and say, hey, I'm declaring for the Royal Rumble. Seth Rollins declares for the Royal Rumble. Something happens there that sets up WrestleMania. Because that has to be your WrestleMania match. Even if we get Ethan Page down the line, like we didn't get this past year, I think you need set up this year.
I agree with that because it's the match they wanted. Exactly like you said, it's the match they wanted last year. He got hurt. You know what I mean? So if you have to book him, we're talking 2 programs in between. You have that Ethan Page to get him warmed up, and then you have that big match with Seth. So, I mean, I think that's the path they have to go in.
And the path I hope WWE, goes in is better creative for a 2-hour Monday Night Raw. Nitram, I remember, like, back when 3 hours was originally announced, I was so young. I was super excited. I got more wrestling. And then I experienced the Vince McMahon 3 hours of Raw. And I'm like, this needs to be 2, maybe even like 1. And now it's to the point where Triple H 3-hour Raws were so good and allowed stories to breathe and develop, and people were getting airtime. And then last night, no Alpha Academy, a QR code for the Wyatt Six. A lot of the women weren't showcased. Rhea Ripley wasn't there. Damian Priest wasn't there. And the list goes on and on. LWO wasn't there. This looks like it's going to be the reality for the fall until they move to Netflix. But when they move to Netflix, would you prefer a 2 or 3 hour Raw?
I'm going to sound so hypocritical here because I've gone for months talking about I have a hard time staying up for Raw. I always do. And when they announced the 2-hour show, I was excited for it. I watched that 2-hour show, and there were points where I said, and I really do mean this, there's points where I said, they try to fit a 3-hour show, didn't know what to cut, so they try to rush everything into one, and it came out so bad. The Jey Uso Xavier Woods match made me extremely disappointed because they had no time to cook or tell the story. They banked on commentary. Half of it was done in a commercial break. You know what I mean? And that was the one where I was sitting there, I was like, this needed more time. But they don't have that time anymore. You know what I mean? So I get that. So I think the problem with Raw, and this is why I need it to be 3 hours, and I hate to say it, but it needs to be 3 hours. Because someone brought up a point, they said, well, SmackDown's only 2 hours. SmackDown ideally is 1 or 2 stories happening at one time. It is Bloodline and B story. So you could fit all that in 2 hours. But Raw is multiple stories going on at one shot. 3, 4 stories. Like you said, we're missing the Wyatt Six. We're missing, all this stuff that was going on. And it's just like, what happened to it? We got a promo for the women's tag match. You know what I mean? Like, it was quick. It was short. The Jey Uso match got cut really short. The best match of the night was the Sheamus match. I don't think it got cut short, but if there was a match to cut short, I think you could have did all the big spots and gave more time to somewhere else. But I get it. It was all rushed. The main event even kind of felt lackluster and rushed when it came towards the end, like if they had that cutoff time. And I'm not used to feeling that, especially watching Raw, for WWE to be like, we have to finish exactly at this time. On SmackDown, it's kind of normal. On NXT, they kind of been going over lately, good for them. But for Raw, it's like, I remember setting my DVR back in the day, and I'd be like, yeah, I got to add an extra 6 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not used to that rush
15, extra 30. There were times like I didn't expect The Rock to come back. And, I'd snuck out of my bedroom, late at night and watched it from the corner of the den into the living room. My parents didn't know I was up because I had school the next morning. But dude, like next day I tried to go back and I'm like, well, I'm glad I did it because it only recorded like 10 minutes afterwards. And I'm like, no. Right. But when this could have been so much better, especially that main event. Like that main event just needed to be on pay-per-view. Like, let's be honest. Yeah. Like you could have cut Bayley and Nia from the pay-per-view, had Sami and Gunther in that spot. And no offense to women, because that's not a sexist remark. It's just the story was there for Sami and Gunther more than Bayley Nia. And they also could have just you
could also just cut like half the promo works they did between matches and added that whole match in there, because that was another issue with the pay-per-view. But
dude, it was it was
I hate to say it, man. 3 hour Raw.
You're good with the 3 hour Raw.
I think we need it. I think Raw needs 3 hours, and I hate to say that, but I think they actually do need it.
It's the classic case of you don't know what you have until it's gone, and everybody's like, I want 3 hours. Which goes to say, like, how great Triple H has been booking. And of course, like, I'm giving Triple H a lot of slack because, I mean, that is different. Like, how do we fit? And it's going to take a few weeks to at least get in a rhythm. But man, I do miss that 3rd hour Raw. But I did get extra sleep last night. And then speaking of tonight, NXT and Dynamite go on. I'll predict Wrestle Dream on Drop the Mic. That drops tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern here on Boom Broadcasting. But tonight, NXT, you and I hope we're both excited because Javon Evans, formerly known as Jay Malachi, a local to the North Carolina region, is wrestling Randy Orton in Orton's hometown, St. Louis. Orton, a future WWE Hall of Famer. It's a huge night for NXT. It's a huge night for Javon Evans. It shows that they actually might think Javon Evans is going to be that next guy. Do you think he is?
Oh, 100%. I love Javon Evans. I tell people this all the time. I've watched him since he was 14 years old. He's wrestled in Greensboro, North Carolina. I could tell you the times he used to wear a luchador mask. Like, interesting stuff about him. He's always been really talented. This match made me so happy, mainly because, people are like, oh, Randy Orton's from St. Louis. It's whatever. Randy Orton is very particular about who he wants to put over, especially in this age of his career. And I think the last guy I remember him actually being made look like a complete star was Keith Lee, if you remember that. And that was to me, it was like Keith Lee's going to be the guy. Obviously didn't go that route, unfortunately. But that was fresh off his NXT call-up where he was the guy. But Javon getting this match, he's going to lose because Randy's the veteran. You know what I mean?
He's getting an RKO.
Yeah, he's going to do some crazy bouncy stuff and get RKO'd, and that's fine. They need to deliver on this match, which these two will. I'm really scared because one of my coworkers brought this up. They said, well, they're just going to get attacked and they'll end up being a tag team. And to me, that's such WWE booking. But I don't think Sean would do it. I don't think Sean would do that to us. You're thinking about it now, aren't you?
I don't want to. That would be terrible.
They're going to end up being a tag team. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was like, that is such Vince McMahon booking. I just couldn't. I don't see Sean doing it. But this match will deliver. It's honestly I'm real excited about it. So on that note, yes.
Go ahead. You're going to give your prediction, aren't you?
I would say, so on that note, I think if somehow Javon wins, this is also a big argument for him to be I should be NXT champion and get him back in that title picture.
Dude, I would love for Javon Evans to get an NXT title opportunity. It honestly looks like I'd love to sit down and talk more about this. It looks like Trick Williams is champion now. I think it's going to go to Oba. I think Oba's the next one after he drops it Tony D. And then I don't know how you get from Oba Femi to Javon Evans, but I think it can work. I think those guys could tell a story. But by the way, speaking of delivery, and speaking of Shawn Michaels, I'm going to need glasses for this part. We got the State of the Union address right here for Shawn Michaels and Triple H on NXT. Dude, how great was this? That we will only say the words bussin', low-key, cat, so on, so forth, and sus. And the number one activity in the Oval Office is, I can't even remember the one from today because I can't get the one out of my head from several years back. Dude, that was fantastic. That was awesome. Gotta take these off. I'm not used to wearing glasses on out of pocket. But what I am used to doing is winning. And I'm gonna win alongside my tag team partner, Mike from Mouthing Off with Mike from the Nightcap. Me and him are going to win that title on Knit Ram's shoulder. Knit Ram, where can people go to find that trivia showdown?
Well, I mean, you guys know, you guys are filming your episode on Thursday. So it'll probably be out next week where everybody can see whether you win or lose. But you do have a great opponent. You have Booking Like a Mark and Rick 8-Bit, who are super knowledgeable. So, but I will say the winner of your matchup gets Wrestling in the Middle, who was the runner-ups. And you guys have history there. So let's see where this all goes.
When I tell you I was robbed, Mike and I were robbed, we were robbed. And I am coming for the 3 Count Trivia Championships. Booking Like a Mark, Rick 8-Bit, always supporting Boom Broadcasting. I appreciate them. But all love will be lost on Thursday. You can make my words very, very clear on that. And then when the VO gets released next week, you guys can see me and Mike advancing for revenge on Wrestle in the Mill. NetRam, appreciate you, my friend, from Four Sides of the Ring.
Always.
Go follow him. Appreciate you, brother.
Always, man. Always.
And it's been a fun time. Guys, Out of Pocket's been awesome today. We had Joseph. We had Chris from Dugout Debrief. We had NitRam from Four Sides of the Ring. You can go follow Four Sides of the Ring. We're doing that trivia showdown. And me and Mike are going to win. So why wouldn't you go subscribe to their YouTube channel and have a blast? Now, to update you on what's happening on Boom Broadcasting, obviously the card, very subject to change. There is no nightcap tonight because NXT happens. AEW happens. Tomorrow, you get a double shot of the nightcap. Mouthing off with Mike talking NXT and Dynamite. This will be the first time he actually has a full 24 hours to decompress, gather his thoughts, and ask his panel what they thought of both NXT and Dynamite. Now, that happens tomorrow night. In addition to this, Wednesday, Quick Hits, 9 a.m., Sideline Savants, your fantasy football podcast at 12 p.m. Drop the Mic Wrestling podcast, Predicting Wrestle Dream, happens at 3 p.m. Lombardi Party, if Carson's okay, he'll go at 6 p.m. The Double Shot Nightcap, he'll go around 9:30-ish tomorrow. And then, of course, Thursday, we got Dugout Debrief back at noon. And then we'll have Out of Pocket with Michael Davis returning on Thursday evening. Guys, I appreciate you so much. Thank you all for tuning in to Out of Pocket. If you guys enjoyed this, send this link to a friend. Say, hey, this was fun. This was entertaining. Check it out. I appreciate all the support. And guys, can't wait to see you back here on Thursday for Out of Pocket. It's been fun.
Well, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed it. We had a ball making it. Thank you very much.